Hey everybody, I am very happy you decided to sit with me and listen to some amazing boring history together. Today we travel to a time of cloistered gardens and quiet courtyards, when the Renaissance world was just stirring from the embrace of night. In this gentle darkness before dawn, the outlines of herbs and flowers lie in wait, soft shapes against ancient stone walls, their fragrance already hinting at the day to come. It is a world where the garden is a sanctuary of calm and reflection, a place where each plant has a purpose and a story. In the Renaissance, nearly every green living thing was believed to hold some virtue, to heal, to nourish, to delight. Medicine, botany, and horticulture were only beginning to take their own separate paths, and for now they walk hand in hand in these tranquil plots of earth. Here, in the cool pre-dawn air, we stand at the threshold of a garden of memory and peace. Take a slow breath of the silvery air. Let us push open the wooden gate and step quietly inside, onto the dewy grass, into the past, into the garden of the Renaissance, filled with herbs and calm. The first light of dawn finds us in a monastic herb garden enclosed by weathered stone walls. Above, the sky is painted in the palest shades of rose and gold. A lone bird sings a tentative morning song from the abbey eaves. In this cloister garden, all is peaceful. The world seems newborn. Gravel pathways, still dark with dew, divide neat rectangles of soil. Each bed is slightly raised and framed by woven wattle fences, forming a simple, functional grid. Within these plots grow the monastery's treasured herbs, each in its own place, each with its own purpose. This orderly plan of beds and paths has endured from medieval times, for it is both practical and pleasing in its symmetry. We walk along one path, our footsteps soft on the damp earth, and gaze upon the abundance around us. In the dim light, the herbs are still beaded with dew. The drops of moisture catch the dawn's glow and glisten like tiny pearls on leaves of sage and mint. A gentle aroma rises as the night's coolness lifts, a mix of green, earthy tones and sweet, lingering fragrance. Here grows sage, its soft gray-green leaves furred with morning dew. The monks cherish sage for its healing power. Indeed, an old saying asks, "Why should a man die while sage grows in his garden?" A reflection of the faith in its virtue as a cure-all. Close by stands a bush of rosemary, its slender needle-like leaves evergreen through all seasons. The herb is sacred to memory and remembrance, and in this quiet hour one can almost feel the presence of those long gone whom the rosemary keeps alive in spirit. Monastic lore holds that rosemary's fragrance strengthens the mind and comforts the soul. A monk in a brown habit bends over the rosemary now, inhaling its piney, soothing scent deeply into his lungs. Perhaps it reminds him of why he tends this patch each day, to heal the body and to uplift the spirit, both his own and those of the community. At the center of the garden, a simple stone well stands sentinel, its rim worn smooth by the hands of generations. A wooden bucket rests nearby, ready to draw water. The well reflects the dawn sky in its dark surface, and a few water lilies drift in the trough around it. From this wellspring, life-giving water is hauled each morning to nourish the herbs. The monk takes up a thumb pot, a humble clay watering vessel with a small hole in the bottom and another on top. He dips it into the brimming bucket, covering the top hole with his thumb, and carries it to a bed of young thyme. Releasing his thumb, he lets a gentle sprinkle of water fall onto the thyme's tiny leaves. The scent that rises is clean and fresh thyme oil released by the touch of water and morning light. Once, it is said, thyme was a symbol of courage, a herb tucked into knights' cloaks for bravery. Here in the cloister, it simply creeps along the path edges, exhaling its subtle balm and attracting the first honeybees of the day. The honeybees are already awake, humming softly as they move from plant to plant. They particularly love the lavender that grows in a neat row beside the garden's low stone wall. Lavender in the dawn light displays its spires of purple-blue blossoms, each floret holding a drop of nectar. As a bee alights and burrows into a bloom, the lavender sways, releasing a cloud of perfume into the air. The fragrance is sweet and clean, calming the heart. One can easily imagine how the monks, after their matins prayers, stroll into this garden to breathe in the lavender scent and feel a sense of heavenly peace. In this era, lavender is cherished not only for its beauty but for its many uses. The monks will later cut some stems to lay among fresh linens. Indeed, in the wider world of the Renaissance, laundresses spread linens over lavender bushes so sunlight would dry them with the flower's aroma. The herb is also believed to ward off disease. Bundled with rosemary, sage, and other aromatics, lavender is thought to purify the air and even guard against plague. But in this dawn hour, such worries seem far away. All that matters is the present moment. The quiet buzz of bees, the cool stone under our fingers as we touch the well's edge, and the lavender's purple haze glowing gently against the gray wall. This monastic garden is both pharmacy and sanctuary. Along one side, near the infirmary buildings, lies the medicinal quarter, a plot devoted to healing herbs. Feverfew and comfrey, wormwood and yarrow grow here in modest clusters, their less showy leaves and blooms valued for their powers. In the soft morning light, their forms are humble, yet each holds potential remedies. Feverfew to ease headaches, comfort to mend bones, wormwood to ward off pests and stir digestion. Nearby, a patch of chamomile displays its small daisy-like flowers with white petals and yellow centers. Even without the sun fully risen, the chamomile emits an apple-like scent when brushed. A young apprentice, a lay brother of the monastery, kneels carefully among the chamomile, pinching off a few fresh blossoms to dry for a calming tea. He moves unhurriedly, mindful not to disturb the bee that lingers on one flower. Chamomile tea is a gentle medicine for anxious hearts and restless nights, a remedy the monks share with both their own and the local villagers who seek comfort. All around us are plants that sustain and heal. Here is rosemary again, in another bed closer to the kitchen side of the cloister, for it serves in cooking as well as healing. There is sage in plentiful supply. Its Latin name salvia means to save, a testament to its perceived ability to save lives with its curative properties. Sage is given for sore throats and to fortify the memory. The monks also know it as a culinary herb, adding savory depth to their simple vegetable stews. Rue grows by the garden's edge with its yellow-green frilled leaves, a bitter herb, but planted here as much for symbolism as for use. In monastery tradition, rue is the herb of grace, associated with repentance and warding off evil. The monk tending the garden might crush a leaf of rue between his fingers, its scent sharp and medicinal, and remember to be humble. Twining up the column of a pergola near the cloister walk, a rose vine is blooming. Though this is an herb garden, even in the austere monastery the beauty of the rose has a place. Pale white roses, symbolic of the Virgin's purity, open to the light, droplets of dew slipping from their ivory petals. In a corner, a few red roses climb as well, their deep fragrance mingling with that of the herbs. Roses have their medicinal uses: rose water to soothe inflamed skin, rose petals and calming potions, but here they mostly serve the soul, not the body. A monk pauses by the rose arbor, perhaps murmuring a prayer. The soft petals remind him of divine love. The enclosed garden itself recalls to him the paradise of Eden, paradise on earth, as cloister gardens were often called. Indeed, the very layout of many cloister gardens, divided into quarters with a central water source or tree, is meant to evoke the 4 rivers of Eden and the living water of God's grace. This morning, as golden sunlight begins to spill over the high cloister walls, one can truly feel that sense of paradise. The garden is a sacred haven, a green chapel where the first rays of day illuminate beds of healing plants, and silence is broken only by birdsong and the distant ringing of a bell calling the brothers to prayer. For a moment, we sit on a worn stone bench beside a small fountain in the corner of the cloister. The fountain's water trickles gently from a simple spout, its sound a constant whisper that soothes the mind. Ivy and moss cling to the stone, and a few ferns have found a home in the damp crevices. From this seat we take in the whole scene: the checkered pattern of herb beds, the monk moving slowly with his watering pot, the flutter of a dove as it lands to drink from the fountain basin. The air is cool and smells of earth and herbs, a scent that feels ancient and nourishing. Overhead, swallows dart through the cloister walk's arches, their wings slicing the quiet air. As we close our eyes, we can imagine that it has always been like this here. Indeed, For centuries, the monks have kept such gardens, passing down their knowledge of each plant's virtues. Many of the very herbs around us were listed in the old monastic plans and texts, from the time of Charlemagne's decrees on royal gardens, through medieval herbals, up to this Renaissance morning. We recall how the 9th century plan of St. Gall, an ideal design for a monastery, included a large kitchen garden and a separate physic garden, both brimming with useful plants and carefully laid out next to the monk's hospital and physician's house. The design before us, with its walled beds each holding a single kind of herb, echoes that ancient plan. Enclosed by walls or hedges to keep out rabbits and wild boars, the garden is safe and orderly. The plants within are protected, just as the souls within the monastery walls are sheltered from worldly chaos. Soon, the day's work in the garden will begin in earnest. The sun climbs higher, and a soft bell from the church tower signals the hour of prime. A pair of monks arrive with baskets in hand to gather the herbs needed for the day. They speak in low voices, not wishing to disturb the garden's peace. One points out which herbs to harvest: a handful of dill and parsley for the kitchen, some fennel fronds too. Fennel, the tall feathery herb by the fence, used to flavor fish and aid digestion. The other monk carefully snips sprigs of rosemary and sage. These will be taken inside to dry in the still room, stored for medicines and for cooking. As they work, they tread lightly on the paths, mindful of the snail that crosses and the ladybug resting on a leaf. They are gardeners of God, tending creation with devotion. For them, gardening is part of the spiritual life. Manual labor in the soil keeps them humble and occupied, for idleness is the enemy of the soul, as the rule of Saint Benedict warns. Each weed pulled up, each furrow of soil turned, is an act of prayer and praise. We watch as one monk gently pulls a weed, perhaps a stray dandelion, from the edge of a bed of marjoram. There were no weeds in medieval times, a saying goes, meaning that many plants we dismiss today were then valued for some use or other. Even the dandelion he plucks will not go to waste. Its leaves might feed the rabbits in the hutch, its milky sap and roots kept for an herbal tonic. The concept of useless plants is foreign here. Every growing thing is part of God's pharmacy. Still, the monks keep order in the garden, lest any one plant choke out another. They compost the trimmings and spent stems behind the kitchen yard, returning nourishment to the soil. The tools of their humble gardening lay nearby: a spade with an ashwood handle, a rake with iron tines polished by years of use, a simple hoe for breaking the soil's crust. In the corner, leaning against the wall, we see a wheelbarrow, a wooden barrow with an iron wheel, ready to carry heavier loads of earth or manure. These tools are surprisingly similar to those gardeners will use even centuries in the future, a testament to their simple effectiveness. As the monks finish their gentle harvest, one pauses by a patch of mint near the fountain. Bright green spearmint grows here, enjoying the moisture in the air by the water. He kneels and plucks a small bunch. Crushing a mint leaf between his fingers, he breathes in the bracing scent, cool, sharp, waking the senses. A smile softens his lined face. Mint will be used in tonight's herbal infusion to aid digestion after the evening meal. But at this moment, its invigorating aroma simply brings clarity to the mind clouded by the early hour. He offers a leaf to us, and we do the same, rub it gently and inhale. The fragrance is at once comforting and refreshing, a gift of morning. Tiny droplets of oil cling to our fingertips, releasing that familiar aroma of clean sweetness and a hint of spice. In the quiet of the cloister garden, even such a small ritual, smelling a crushed mint leaf, becomes a profound experience, a small, quiet moment of connection between human and nature. The sun has now lifted above the monastery's tile roofs, casting long beams of light that slant through the arcade and illuminate motes of dust in the air. The once gray-green sage leaves now glow silver, and the white rose petals seem almost translucent in the brightness. Warmth begins to replace the dawn chill. The bees grow bolder and busier, zigzagging among marigolds and clover that border the herb beds. From elsewhere in the abbey, faint chanting can be heard, the monks singing their morning praises in the chapel, the notes floating over the garden wall like a benediction. We realize it is time to move on, to let this sacred space continue its daily rhythms. But before we depart, we cast one last loving glance over the monastery herbarium. Within these walls grow roses and lilies, sage and rosemary, and countless aromatic herbs that feed both body and soul. Monks will use them to treat the sick, to flavor their simple meals, and to lift the spirits of any who wander in. This enclosed garden, cared for with devotion, is truly a living place of reflection, medicine, and peace. It stands as a testament to the patience of the gardener monk and the enduring bond between humankind and the healing earth. And now, with the day fully begun, let us walk farther. We leave by a small wooden door in the garden wall, stepping out from the cloister's embrace. The door closes softly behind us, and we find ourselves on a narrow footpath leading away from the abbey. The morning sun welcomes us, and the open fields beyond shimmer with light. A gentle breeze carries the scent of herbs from the monastery garden, as if bidding us goodbye. Ahead, beyond a hedgerow, we see the thatched roofs of a village and the curl of smoke from cottage chimneys. Beyond the trellis of hawthorn and wild rose, the scent of sage and wood smoke mingles in the air, inviting us onward. The world outside the cloister is waking, and another kind of garden awaits us there, one tended not by monks in silence, but by ordinary folk in the rhythm of daily life. Let us follow the winding path, dew on our feet and sun at our backs, to the next sanctuary of green, the kitchen garden of a humble home. We arrive as the sun climbs toward its zenith, casting a gentle warmth over a village kitchen garden. This garden lies behind a small timber-framed cottage with whitewashed walls and a thatched roof. A low stone wall, half covered in climbing roses and morning glory, encircles the plot, with a wooden gate creaking softly as we enter. Here, the atmosphere is different from the cloister's hushed order. It is homely and alive with the buzz of daily activity. Chickens cluck softly nearby, pecking at insects in the soil. A tabby cat suns itself on the warm flagstones by the kitchen door, lazily flicking its tail. Yet a sense of peace pervades this space too. This is a cottage garden, modest and unstructured, where vegetables, fruits, flowers, and herbs all grow together in cheerful abundance. It may look less formal than the monastery's beds, but it is no less full of purpose and care. The noon light drenches the garden in gold. Rows of cabbage and kale spread their broad leaves, glistening from a morning watering. Pea vines twine up a rough wooden trellis, their last pale blossoms giving way to pods. Among them, marigolds, calendula, are planted in sunny clusters, bright orange faces turned to the sun. Not only do they add color, but the country folk know marigolds help keep pests from the crops, and the petals can be used in broths and salves. A patch of onions and leeks stands tall with green tubular leaves. Their subtle pungent smell mixes with the sweeter notes of herbs that edge every path and bed. The soil here is dark and rich, evidence of kitchen scraps and manure dug in over seasons to feed the plants. A narrow dirt path winds through the plot, just wide enough for the mistress of the house to walk with her apron basket, gathering the makings of dinner. In this garden, herbs grow intermingled with vegetables and flowers. Basil and summer savory nestle near a cluster of beans, ready to lend their flavor to the pot of stew simmering on the hearth inside. A large clump of parsley spills out of a corner near the door, its frilled green leaves easy to reach when the cook needs a handful for soup or to chew as a breath freshener. Parsley is beloved in these times, not just as garnish, but as a herb that symbolizes festivity and can help with digestion. A few steps away, thyme and winter savory form a low carpet edging a plot of lettuces. When the gardener steps there, the thyme releases its warm, resinous fragrance. This mingling of scent and utility is intentional. By planting thyme and savory near the greens, pests are deterred by the aroma, and the household has seasoning close at hand. We recall that in later ages, gardeners would call such companion planting wise, but here it is simply tradition passed down from mother to daughter. Plant herbs among your vegetables to keep the garden healthy. Leaning against the sunny south wall of the cottage is a small kitchen door trellis, and climbing upon it is a profusion of sage and rosemary intertwined. The cottage's mistress planted rosemary by the door as many do, It is said to bring good luck and to keep harmful spirits at bay. Some even whisper that rosemary flourishes where the woman rules, an old adage meaning that a healthy rosemary bush signifies a household guided by a capable wife. Indeed, the rosemary here is thriving, its blue flowers humming with bees, spreading a piney perfume each time the door opens. The good wife of this home must be a diligent gardener. As for sage, she keeps it near the door so that it's easy to snip a few soft leaves for the evening's pottage or for a healing tisane. Sage in folk belief carries the essence of domestic virtue and longevity, a treasured plant for a family that wishes to thrive. On this warm midday, the sun has heated the sage's gray-green leaves, and as we brush by, the air fills with its robust, soothing scent. A movement catches our eye. Near a bed of carrots and turnips, a figure is bent over, tending the soil. It is the lady of the house herself, or perhaps a village woman come to help. A broad straw hat shields her from the sun as she works. In her hand is a simple wooden hoe, which she uses to gently loosen the earth around the roots of the vegetables. The woman pauses to wipe her brow, and we see she has placed a basket nearby, half filled with green and purple heads of lettuce, some radishes, and a bunch of bright red onions pulled from the ground. Likely she is gathering ingredients for the midday meal. In the shade of an old pear tree at the garden's corner, a young girl, perhaps her daughter, sits cross-legged, carefully tying sprigs of herbs together with twine. They have harvested various herbs in small bundles: mint, oregano, chives, and perhaps some tarragon. These will be hung from the kitchen rafters to dry, ensuring a supply of flavor and medicine through the seasons. The child holds up a bundle of mint to her nose and giggles at the sharp, sweet smell that tingles her senses. The mother smiles, reminding her to tie it tightly and label it with a scrap of parchment so they remember which is which. In these cottage gardens, knowledge is passed down in simple ways, the child learning which leaf is mint and which is lemon balm by smell and touch, long before she can read any herbal book. We stroll further into the garden, ducking under the arch of an ancient apple tree heavy with unripe green fruit. Beneath its dappled shade grows a patch of chamomile and sweet woodruff, allowed to spread as a kind of living carpet. The chamomile's tiny white daisies wink up at us. Crushing a few underfoot sends up that familiar honey apple aroma. This part of the garden feels especially tranquil. In fact, a crude wooden bench is set here, where one might sit on a hot day to cool off, perhaps with a mug of small ale or herb infusion. We imagine the gardener resting here at twilight, listening to crickets, the heady scent of night stock flowers perfuming the air. But at midday, rest is brief, there are tasks to complete. A clay pitcher of water stands nearby, and the woman goes to fetch it. With practiced motion, she pours water at the base of each thirsty plant, careful not to waste a drop. Water is precious, drawn from the village well or rain barrel, and so each cabbage and pea is given a drink with frugal attention. Some country gardens even maintain a little pond or barrel where manure is steeped, creating a rich manure tea, to fertilize the plants, but here the simpler method suffices. Bucket and pitcher, muscle and care. A low buzzing drone grows louder as we near a corner of the plot. Here stands a trio of straw skeps, traditional beehives, sheltered under a lean-to roof of thatch. The cottagers keep bees not only for honey, a sweetener and treasured food, as sugar is rare, but also for beeswax to make candles. The bees range freely through the garden and beyond, pollinating the blossoms of beans, squash, fruit trees, and, of course, the beloved herbs. We watch as dozens of honeybees flit in and out of the purple heads of lavender that line the path. The sound of their industry is deeply soothing, nature's own lullaby on a warm day. One bee, dusted with golden pollen, clambers over a cluster of borage flowers nearby. The borage's star-shaped blue blooms tremble as the bee drinks deeply of nectar. Borage is a friendly herb of the cottage garden. Its flowers are said to gladden the heart, and its leaves find their way into salads and cool drinks. Borage for courage, people say, believing it can lift the spirits. Certainly, watching the bees dance among its blossoms, one cannot help but feel a gentle joy. In the full sun, some herbs release their fragrance freely into the air, as if offering it to anyone who passes. We find a border of rosemary, also known as alecost or Bible leaf, with long, serrated leaves that smell of mint and balsam. The mistress likely dries these leaves to lay in the family Bible or prayer book, hence its nickname, so that the pages smell fresh and to act as a natural bookmark. This fragrance also repels insects. Not far off, southernwood, the old lad's love or wormwood relative, grows lanky and gray-green. A quick rub of its feathery foliage yields a lemony, resinous scent that keeps moths away from closets and linens. Such plants are as useful as any for a prudent housewife, and their presence in the garden is as valued as the cabbages and beans. In one corner, we even see a patch of woad, not an herb for cooking, but a dye plant for the weaver's arts, yielding blue color for yarn. This tells us perhaps the household engages in small-scale textile work or at least values self-sufficiency in many crafts. The garden is not only the source of food and medicine, but of dye, fragrance, and household materials. As noon passes and the sun's heat becomes more pronounced, the cottage garden seems to grow drowsy. The cat that was lounging by the door has now slipped inside the cool shadows of the house. The chickens retreat under a mulberry bush, clucking softly as they peck at fallen berries. We can smell the enticing aroma of something cooking, likely a broth of leeks, herbs, and barley, wafting through the open kitchen window. The woman and her daughter have finished their harvesting. They carry the baskets of fresh produce and herbs indoors, the door left ajar behind them. For a moment, we peek inside. Bundles of herbs hang from the beams in the kitchen, ceiling, rosemary, thyme, and braided strings of garlic and onions. Earthenware jars line a wooden shelf, each labeled in a scrawling hand. Perhaps one holds dried mint for tea, another holds salve made from calendula petals, another seeds saved from last year's dill and coriander. The tools of herbalcraft are present too. A stone mortar and pestle for grinding herbs, linen cloths for straining tinctures, and small bottles for storing precious oils. It is evident that the lady of this house is not only a cook but an herbalist for her family. In an age where the village apothecary might be far away or costly, the knowledge of healing plants often rests with the women tending their own gardens. The daily routine of tending this garden is woven seamlessly into the fabric of life here. In the cool of early morning, water would be drawn and the garden watered as needed, dew collected from cabbage leaves for use in beauty potions, perhaps. Mid-morning, the household would gather what is ripe and ready. Eggs from the hens, herbs for the kitchen, vegetables for the day's meals. Through the afternoon, some weeding and maintenance, tying up sagging pea vines, pinching off the tips of basil to keep it from flowering, turning the compost heap with a fork to aerate it. Come late afternoon, children might be tasked with scaring birds away from the berry bushes or fetching more water. It is likely towards evening the garden will be visited again to pick a few last things for supper, and perhaps to enjoy its beauty in the day's fading light. In small cottages like this, the garden is an extension of the home, a living pantry and pharmacy just steps from the door. This care is as important as cooking or mending. Indeed, it is cooking and healing at their source. We take a slow walk along the edge of the garden, where a hedgerow of herbs and wildflowers marks the boundary. Here, nature and cultivation blend. The hedge is a mix of hawthorn and hazel for structure, but at its base grow tangles of wild strawberries, violets, and pennyroyal. A few red poppies have seated themselves there, their scarlet petals shimmering against the green weeds perhaps, but welcome ones, as their vivid cheer adorns the plot. Among them, spikes of foxglove rise, pink bells nodding heavily. Though foxglove is beautiful, the wise woman knows it is potent and poisonous. She will admire it but likely leave it be, or use it with great caution for certain heart remedies. It's a reminder that not all that grows is meant for the stewpot. Some plants are to be respected from a distance. A wooden scarecrow stands along the hedge, a broad-brimmed hat on its head and ribbons fluttering from its outstretched arms. It guards the ripening blackcurrants and raspberries from the cheeky sparrows. The presence of the scarecrow, with its friendly, homespun look, an old tunic of the farmer, perhaps, stuffed with straw, adds a quiet charm to the scene. One can imagine children playing around it in the long summer evenings, chasing fireflies while their parents sit on the bench under the apple tree. The rhythms of this kitchen garden reflect the cycle of the seasons and the flow of time. In spring, new seedlings of cabbages, onions, and herbs were carefully planted out after the last frost, the garden bursting with fresh green. Now, in summer's height, it is a riot of growth, the reward of those preparations, full of color and scent. In autumn, heavy pumpkins and gourds will lie in the sun, and bunches of herbs will be tied and hung in the pantry to dry, seeds collected for next year, and root vegetables stored in the cool ground or cellar. Winter will see the garden rest under frost, save for hardy kales and cabbages, while dried herbs and preserves sustain the family. Through all these changes, the garden gives and the gardener tends, in a partnership as old as memory. Even in a time of emerging science and grand botanical gardens, it is this humble cottage garden, with its mix of the useful and the beautiful, that remains the heart of daily sustenance for most folk. Before we take our leave, we linger near a patch of lavender and mint by the gate. The sun has warmed the lavender's purple flowers, and their oil perfumes the air, a fragrance of calm and cleanliness that will ever be associated with simple homely comfort. The mint, creeping in a cool, shady spot, offers its sharp counterpoint whenever a breeze rustles its leaves. The combination is heavenly. We notice a small bunch of dried lavender hanging by the doorway. Likely the good wife places lavender in her linen chest to deter moths and keep sheets smelling sweet. The thought of a freshly made bed scented with lavender, on a cool linen sheet, under a thatched roof while rain patters. These simple pleasures have been cherished from Renaissance days to our own. As we push open the little gate to depart, we catch sight of the woman of the house once more. She has come back outside with a loaf of brown bread just cooled from baking, and she breaks off a piece to scatter crumbs for the sparrows. She looks over her garden with quiet pride. In this small patch of earth, she has nearly everything she needs to feed and care for her household. Perhaps she murmurs a short grace under her breath, thanking God for the abundance and asking for continued growth. The sun lights her face as she closes her eyes for a moment of gratitude. Watching her, we too feel grateful for the chance to witness this intimate harmony of person and garden, labor and reward, earth and nourishment. Now our path calls us onward again. We step out onto the village lane, where sunlight dances between the shadows of trees and cottages. As we walk, we pass other little gardens behind fences, hearing snatches of midday sounds, a lullaby sung to a baby under a tree, the thunk of an axe splitting wood, distant laughter of children chasing a goose. The air carries a blend of homely scents, baking bread, wood smoke, and the ubiquitous sweet green smell of herbs from countless doorside plantings. We reflect that in each of these homes, gardens large or small are providing solace and sustenance. Even in the finest of manor houses, the great halls rely on their kitchen gardens and physic gardens for fresh ingredients and remedies. Indeed, not far beyond the village lies the estate of the local lord, and we hear that he too keeps extensive gardens, not just for utility, but for pleasure and display. With the sun now past its highest and beginning to gently descend westward, let us follow the road out of the village and through the fields, toward the manor grounds. There, a different style of garden awaits, one of green geometry, playful fountains, and perfumed walks designed for leisure. We leave behind the rustic cottage charm and venture into the realm of Renaissance elegance, the pleasure garden of the aristocracy. The gravel crunches softly under our feet as we enter the grand pleasure garden of a Renaissance estate. The transition from the wildflower-edged country lane to this ordered haven is striking and delightful. Tall wrought iron gates, flanked by stone pillars topped with carved lions, have opened to admit us. Beyond stretches an vista of manicured green. Geometric parterres and knot gardens unfold in intricate patterns, their shapes outlined by low hedges of thyme and lavender. A broad path of crushed oyster shells, gleaming white in the sunlight, leads our eye inward, through a series of garden rooms and spaces separated by yew hedges and lattice trellises laden with climbing roses. It is late afternoon now. The sun's light is mellow and golden, casting the long shadows of sculpted shrubs across lawns as soft as velvet. A gentle breeze sets the leaves of the trees to a faint rustling, a pleasant, hushed sound that complements the distant trickle of water. This garden is one of delight and repose, a living artwork meant to please the senses and elevate the mind. As we step deeper into the grounds, The fragrance that envelopes us is sublime. We detect notes of rose and jasmine, orange blossom and clove pinks, carnations, intermingled with the familiar herbal scents of rosemary, marjoram, and lemon balm. Here, herbs are not only for the kitchen or infirmary. They are celebrated for their aroma and beauty as equals to the finest flowers. In a nearby bed, intricate knot designs are laid out, a hallmark of Renaissance garden art. Carefully clipped herbs form interlacing patterns like embroidery on the earth. We see knots of lavender, germander, and santolina making elegant loops and twists. The low mounds of lavender are abuzz with bees even now, and the germander's tiny leaves are neatly shorn to keep the lines crisp. Between the woven herbal knots, the gardeners have strewn colored sand and gravel in reds and whites, accentuating the design. From an upstairs window of the manor house, or a raised terrace at the far end of the garden, these knots appear as a unified artwork, living geometric carpets whose beauty can only be fully appreciated from above. But at ground level, we enjoy them differently, breathing in their mixed fragrance and marveling at the patience and care it must take to maintain such intricate patterns. This is the most elaborate kind of formal herb garden, a creation of both nature and human artistry that became fashionable in Elizabethan times. We wander along a shaded allée, a path bordered by young lime trees planted at measured intervals. The trees' branches arch overhead, creating a dappled shade that offers relief from the sun. Beneath them runs a row of herbs and flowers chosen for their fragrance, a true border of sweet-smelling herbs, as medieval garden writers like Albertus Magnus advised. Here is rue, its yellow blooms modest but its scent strong and somewhat bitter herbal, believed to sharpen the eyesight and ward off plague. Next to it, basil with its lush green leaves adds a spicy sweet note. The estate's Italian gardener insisted on basil for authenticity, as Renaissance Italy's influence on gardens is keenly felt. And there is sage again, not the sprawling kitchen patch of the cottage, but a tidy row of purple flowering sage, a decorative cultivar valued as much for its looks as its uses. Butterflies flit among the sage blossoms, adding flickers of color, small tortoiseshells and painted ladies dancing through the afternoon light. Enclosure, intimacy, fragrance, all the elements of the ancient herber or private pleasure garden are here, refined to a high art. High hedges ensure a sense of privacy, making each section of the garden feel like a secret sanctuary despite its openness and size. Presently, we come upon a fountain at a central intersection of paths. It is a circular fountain made of marble, its basin low and wide. At its heart, a stone cherub pours water from a jug, creating a gentle cascade. Around the fountain's rim, stone benches invite the weary walker to sit and cool themselves. We do so, taking a seat on a smooth, sun-warmed bench. Immediately at our back, planted in demi-urns, are small bay laurel trees pruned into cones. Their glossy leaves give off a savory aroma, bay for honor and wisdom, often a feature in noble gardens. We close our eyes and listen. The water's music is soothing, blending with the soft chirp of swallows overhead and the distant sound of a gardener's shears snip-snip as he trims a hedge further away. The air tastes of summer, fragrant, warm, and still carrying moisture from the fountain spray. This is a space meant for leisure and contemplation, where one might read poetry or engage in philosophical conversation, or simply sit in pleasant idleness, letting the beauty of the surroundings sink in. In fact, not far off under a bower of trellised grapevines, we notice a noble lady and gentleman strolling slowly. They move languidly, as if savoring each step, each moment. The lady is dressed in a flowing gown of sage-green silk, embroidered with floral patterns. The gentleman by her side carries a small book, perhaps a collection of sonnets or an herbal treatise, and now and then they pause as he reads a line or points out a particular plant. They might be discussing the language of flowers or the new botanical discoveries coming from distant lands. For this is the Renaissance, an age of curiosity and rediscovery, and gardens like this are as much about knowledge as pleasure. The couple stops by a bed where an exotic lily stands tall, its petals a deep crimson with golden throats. The lady leans in to inhale its perfume, closing her eyes in delight. This might be one of the rare specimens the lord of the manor collected, new breeds of flowers or herbs brought from beyond the seas by traders and explorers. Indeed, collectors' gardens became a trend in these times. One corner of this estate is likely devoted to a small curiosity garden of unusual plants organized for study. Perhaps we can see it from here, a section where each plant is labeled with a little painted sign, showing its Latin name and country of origin. Many of the plants are still laid out in the traditional rectangular beds. The Renaissance botanical gardens kept that medieval format of simple beds for practicality, but the contents are ever expanding as new specimens arrive. A lemon tree from Spain in a terracotta pot, a strange Indian jasmine vine from far-off lands, even a tulip or two from the Ottoman Empire, preciously kept. These wonders reflect the era's expanding horizons. We rise and wander towards a pergola that entices with dappled shade. Over the pergola winds a sweet briar rose and purple clematis, their intertwined blooms forming a natural tapestry of pink and violet. Beneath it, the ground is paved with simple stones that have been overgrown at the edges by creeping time. With every footfall, the time releases a burst of its warm, lemony aroma. This pathway leads us to a more secluded part of the garden, a secret garden, or giardino segreto, as the Italians call it. It is a small enclosed square tucked behind taller hedges, accessible only by the pergola tunnel. Inside, it truly feels apart from the world. A single stone statue stands against the far hedge, a graceful figure of Flora, the Roman goddess of flowers, draped in marble garlands. At Flora's feet is a bed of violets and primroses, though now in summer only their leaves remain, hinting that this spot burst with color in spring. The layout here is simple: a green lawn, soft as a carpet, and at its center a shallow reflecting pool that mirrors the sky. White water lilies float on its surface, and orange-red koi fish circle lazily just below, catching glints of sunlight on their scales. Around the lawn, in four symmetrical beds, grow the aromatic herbs of love and devotion. Rosemary, for remembrance and fidelity, often used in weddings. Myrtle, symbol of love, its petite white blossoms adding sweet scent. Lavender, for luck and purity in marriage. And thyme, for courage and strength of heart. Perhaps this secret garden is designed for the lady of the manor to meditate on such virtues, or for intimate walks and private talks away from servants' ears. One can picture her here at dusk, plucking a sprig of myrtle to press in a letter, or sitting by the pool with a lute, strumming a quiet melody while inhaling the soothing blend of herbal fragrances. Exiting the secret garden, we hear the faint crunch of footsteps on gravel and the murmur of voices. Rounding a hedge, we come across a head gardener and his apprentice inspecting one of the long borders. The head gardener, an older man with sun-bronzed skin and a neatly trimmed beard, carries a pair of iron shears and wears a leather apron. The young apprentice holds a trug basket filled with clippings. They seem to be discussing the health of the rosemary hedge that lines the walkway. The hedge is tall and carefully clipped, with tiny pale blue flowers still dotting it. The gardener breaks off a snippet of rosemary and crushes it between his fingers, testing its fragrance and perhaps checking for any sign of disease or pests. We catch a bit of what he says, praising the rosemary's vigor and instructing the boy to water it deeply at the roots come evening. Rosemary hedges like this are common in great gardens, sometimes grown so large one can walk between them. Their everlasting scent and evergreen presence make them a favorite, as much for form as for aroma. As the two gardeners move on, we see the apprentice has other duties. His basket contains cuttings of boxwood from some topiary work, and a handful of spent rose blooms he must have deadheaded earlier. They walk off toward the orangery. We glimpse a small greenhouse structure in the distance where citrus trees likely overwinter and tender exotic herbs are sheltered. Their passing reminds us that behind the beauty of this estate garden lies constant work. Pruning, weeding, watering, planting, often done by a whole team of gardeners. Where the monastery had a few devoted brothers and the cottage a single family, an estate of this size might employ a master gardener versed in the latest horticultural arts, and several hands under him. Together they orchestrate the blooms and harvests, following the designs approved by the lord and lady. We stroll next to a long arbor entwined with grapevines and perhaps honeysuckle, leading toward an orchard area. The canopy of vines provides a pleasant corridor of shade, punctuated by the sweet, heady fragrance of honeysuckle blossoms that attract bumblebees and hummingbird moths. Golden afternoon light filters through the leaves, painting flickering patterns on the ground. At the end of the arbor, we emerge into a fruit orchard laid out in neat rows. This too is part of the garden's charm, not wild, sprawling orchards like on a farm, but a curated orchard of dwarf fruit trees. Apples, pears, and plums are trained into pleasing shapes, some as espaliers along sunny walls, others pruned into goblet forms. The grass beneath them is kept short and is studded with clover and chamomile to make a fragrant lawn. In one corner stands a picturesque bee-bowl wall, a low wall with alcoves where straw beehives sit, much like at the cottage but integrated into the estate design. Bees ensure good pollination of the fruit and provide honey for the Lord's table, just as for the peasants, albeit in finer dishes and subtler confections. A couple of estate staff are here, gently picking the first ripe apricots from an espaliered tree, placing them carefully in a padded basket. The fruit orchard not only provides food but is arranged as a pleasure ground, a place to wander in spring when blossoms shower the paths, and to take delight in summer under the shade with ripening fruits perfuming the warm air. It harkens back to the idea of the Garden of Eden as an orchard of delight. Indeed, orchard and garden often blended in symbolism and reality, even in monasteries where orchards were seen as paradisal. Throughout this estate garden, cultural and symbolic meanings abound, woven subtly into the design. We notice a pattern. Many of the herbs and flowers have been chosen not only for color or scent, but for the virtues they represent to the Renaissance mind. Over there is a bed of lilies, pure white Madonna lilies whose sweet fragrance is almost overwhelming in the heat. They signify purity and were often grown in cloisters and court gardens alike as emblems of the Virgin Mary or general virtue. Across from the lilies stands a knot of marjoram and oregano, modest plants in comparison, but marjoram was linked to happiness and peace. The gardeners have arranged contrasting colors and symbols as if creating a living tapestry with hidden meanings. Perhaps a section where red roses love intertwine with white jasmine, grace and amiability, or a sundial ringed by heliotrope, devotion, as the flower turns to the sun, and time, courage, sending a message that time should be faced with devotion and bravery. These allegories and plants delight the learned visitors who can decipher them. For others, they simply create an atmosphere of richness and depth that one can feel even without fully knowing why. As shadows lengthen slightly, indicating the approach of evening, the golden light intensifies the colors in the garden. The fountain's spray glistens in the slanting rays, 1,000 droplets shining like sparks as they fall. The rosy hue of the stone walls and statuary grows warmer, and the cool greens of the lawns deepen. It is that magical hour when the garden seems to hold its breath, savoring the last warmth of day before dusk settles. A few estate guests, perhaps after their afternoon rest, wander out to enjoy this scene. We see an elderly gentleman in scholarly robes seated on a bench reading from a large tome, likely an herbal or a treatise on plants, given the setting. Perhaps it is the famous Herbal by John Gerard or an Italian gardening manual by Leon Battista Alberti. Such books were becoming popular now, bridging practical gardening with humanist scholarship. The old man looks up from his pages occasionally to observe a living example of what he reads. He reads of the virtues of the columbine flower, and there in the border it nods in the breeze. He notes a passage on clove carnations, and their spice-sweet scent drifts to him from a nearby bed. This blending of book learning and sensory experience is quintessentially Renaissance knowledge coming alive in the garden. It strikes us that this estate garden, grand and decorative as it is still deeply connected to the healing and nurturing aspect of herbs. Perhaps within the manor house there is a still room where the lady or her servants distill rosewater from the rose petals gathered here, make lavender sachets for linens, or concoct herbal salves for household remedies. Noble women often prided themselves on such skills, maintaining recipe books for both medicinal cures and sweet perfumes. The raw ingredients all flourish around us. Costly spices like clove and cinnamon might be missing, being imports, but the climate yields plentiful thyme, sage, chamomile, fennel, and even poppies and foxglove for the apothecary's work if needed. We recall how even the famous jardin de plantes in Paris, essentially a royal physic garden, would be founded in the early 17th century to grow medicinal herbs for the king. Here, on a smaller scale, an aristocratic family ensures they have their own supply of healing and cooking herbs at hand, cared for by skilled gardeners. Herb gardens in the homes of the aristocracy and burgeoning middle class flourished during the Renaissance, practical yet also symbols of status and knowledge. This estate's garden perfectly exemplifies that it is not just a showpiece, but a badge of cultivation, intellectual and literal. To walk among these ordered beds of rare plants and old remedies is to advertise one's worldliness and wisdom, all while enjoying the gentle pleasures of nature. We continue our slow promenade, noticing now the cool marble statues placed here and there at focal points. One, half draped in ivy, represents an ancient physician, perhaps Aesculapius, holding a serpent-entwined staff, overlooking the herb garden area as a guardian of health. Another statue depicts Pomona, Roman goddess of fruit, holding a basket of orchard's bounty, fittingly placed near the orchard gate. These artworks underscore the theme that gardens are places of both art and nature, cultivation and culture entwined. We recall that many Renaissance thinkers saw gardening as a high art form. Did not Francis Bacon later write that gardening is the purest of human pleasures? And earlier, the Italian humanists praised the virtues of retreating to one's villa garden for contemplation, imitating the Roman philosophers. Standing here, it is easy to understand such sentiments. The mind feels at ease yet invigorated among these harmonious sights, smells, and sounds. One can think grand thoughts or none at all, simply absorbing the serenity. We take a final turn through a labyrinthine hedge maze at one far end, an amusing feature popular in larger gardens for those who seek a playful challenge. The hedges are high and meticulously clipped, the paths winding in perplexing loops. Laughter echoes from within. A pair of children, perhaps the young heirs of the estate, are racing through trying to find the center where a small folly, a gazebo or statue, awaits. We do not venture fully in, for fear of losing our way and precious time. But from the entrance we inhale the scent of the sweet thyme and chamomile that are planted at the foot of the hedges. Many hedge mazes were indeed carpeted with these herbs, so that walking them became an aromatic adventure. How charming to imagine the children emerging from the maze, shoes scented with crushed thyme, their spirits exhilarated by both the game and the herb's legendary courage-bestowing fragrance. Leaving the maze and the main gardens, we find an inviting path leading out toward a quieter, more naturalistic area of the estate. The formal layouts begin to soften here. Lawns slope gently down to a reflecting pond ringed by willows, and beyond it lies a small grove of oaks, perhaps the beginning of a little woodland or wilderness garden that some estates maintained for contrast and hunting. We pause at the pond's edge. Lilies float here too, and their broad pads create a mosaic of light and shadow on the water. Small dragonflies skim the surface, and the reflection of the sky quivers with the movement of fish below. There is a simple wooden boat tied to a post, used perhaps for romantic rowing outings or to gather aquatic plants. We see, in fact, a clump of water mint at the pond's edge, giving off a sharp, clean scent when disturbed, and some meadowsweet with frothy white blooms, an herb that loves wet ground and was used to flavor wine and ale, also to strew on floors for its sweet smell. Its very name, meadowsweet, speaks to its fragrance. These wilder herbs at the periphery remind us that not all is pruning and planning. A Renaissance garden often tried to strike a balance between artifice and nature. Here at the edges, nature is allowed a bit more freedom. The grass is longer, sprinkled with daisies. A rabbit darts into the brush as we approach, no doubt considering this part of the garden his domain when gardeners aren't watching. The sun dips lower, and the estate's bells toll softly in the distance, marking late afternoon. The noble family and guests will likely prepare to withdraw indoors for supper soon. Lanterns might be lit along the main paths if they venture out again at twilight. But for us, it is time to depart this gracious haven and continue our journey into the evening. We take with us the sensory memory of this place. The sight of the golden light on the knot garden, the taste of aromatic herbs on the breeze, the sound of fountain water and polite laughter, the touch of soft petal and cool stone bench, and the scent, above all the scent of 100 interwoven perfumes, from rose to rosemary, lavender to linden blossom. Truly, this pleasure garden has lived up to its purpose, to delight the senses and bring calm to the soul. As we exit through the gates, casting one last glance at the estate, the sky to the west is beginning to flush with the colors of approaching dusk: mauve, coral, and pale orange. We find ourselves on a lane again, and just ahead there is a small chapel and a set of buildings that suggest an apothecary's shop or maybe a scholar's abode near the estate. Perhaps it is part of the manor's holdings, a place where learned men study the properties of the plants grown in the gardens. It reminds us that in this time, knowledge of herbs is blossoming into new forms. Universities and physicians are examining plants more scientifically even as they remain steeped in traditional lore. The day is not done with our exploration of herbal tranquility, for as night falls, there is the garden of the mind and soul to consider, and how the Renaissance garden appears under stars and lamplight. With a grateful heart for the experiences so far, let us carry on, beyond the manicured rows and into a more contemplative space, where evening shadows gather among the greenery and the world grows quiet once more. The air is cooling as the sun sinks low, and we arrive at a quiet enclave on the edge of the estate's village. A physic garden attached to a small apothecary's workshop or perhaps a university college of medicine. This garden is more modest in scale than the grand manor grounds, but it is richly stocked with plants of great interest. Laid out in a simple rectangular grid of beds with narrow paths, it resembles a monastic herbarium in design, yet here the intent is explicitly scholarly. A low stone wall surrounds it, and a wooden gate creaks as we let ourselves in. The last beams of sunlight slant across rows of labels written in Latin. Each bed and plant is carefully identified. Foxglove, digitalis, in one plot; meadowsweet, spirea, in another; valerian, St. John's wort, lungwort, comfrey, angelica. All the venerable healing herbs stand marshaled in order, some tall and flowering, others low and leafy. At this hour, the garden is empty of people. The physicians and students have retired for dinner, giving it an air of contemplative stillness. A small greenhouse or orangery stands at one side, its glass windows now glowing with the reflection of the setting sun. Peering through, we see delicate tropical herbs and overwintered plants, possibly a pepper vine or a rare aloeswood tree, treasures of the plant world that need protection in colder climates. This reminds us how the Renaissance thirst for knowledge has brought new species into Europe's gardens. Not far from the greenhouse, within the open beds, is a special section where exotic newcomers grow, carefully tended. One bed holds a thriving tomato vine, a novelty from the New World, grown more as a curiosity than food at this time, its round fruits still green. Another supports a few stalks of maize, corn, and yet another, to our fascination, has the tall, saw-edged leaves of a tobacco plant, with its sticky, aromatic foliage, likely studied for its medicinal smoke more than for pleasure, as smoking was still a new and intriguing practice introduced from the Americas. These foreign guests in the physic garden illustrate that the world is expanding. The flora of distant continents are slowly joining the repertoire of European herbals. A placard in front of the tobacco plant even notes its origin and the year it was first planted here, as a point of pride. It's clear that this physic garden serves as a living library of botany and medicine, reflecting the Renaissance pursuit to catalog and understand the natural world. As twilight deepens, the colors in the garden beds begin to fade from view, but the white and silvery plants now stand out. We notice how many medicinal flowers are white or pale. The umbels of Queen Anne's lace, wild carrot, glow faintly, and the gray leaves of wormwood catch the dim light. Moths have begun flitting among the blooms, taking the place of the now sleepy bees. One bed is devoted to night-blooming flowers useful in apothecary. The evening primrose opens its yellow stars after dusk, releasing a subtle sweetness. The moonflower vine unfurls one ghostly trumpet-shaped blossom that wasn't visible in daylight. These add a kind of enchantment to the scholarly garden, reminding us that nature has its nocturnal side too, and that healers often gather certain herbs under the moon, believing them to be more potent than. Indeed, it is known among these learned folks that the alignment of stars and moon can guide planting and harvesting, a wisdom partly inherited from monastic traditions and partly from astrological theories common in Renaissance medicine. We recall hearing that monks and farmers alike used lunar calendars to sow and reap. Standing here in dusk's quiet, it's easy to imagine a physician coming out with a lantern on a certain auspicious night to pick blossoms of yarrow or leaves of sage at their prime influence. A gentle voice breaks the silence. From the far end of the garden, an elderly apothecary emerges, carrying a small lantern. Perhaps he has come to check on a decoction simmering in his workshop, or simply to have a moment in his beloved garden before night fully falls. He notices us but does not startle. Instead, he gives a kind nod and gestures that we are welcome to stay. He strolls slowly along one path, occasionally stooping despite his stiff back to inspect a plant. We see him nip a dried seed head of poppy, shaking it lightly, perhaps testing if the seeds are ready to collect. Poppy is grown here for its medicinal latex, a potent pain reliever, and its presence is carefully monitored. Next, he pinches off a few dried lavender and rose petals from a bush in the corner, likely to use in soothing ointments or conserves. The apothecary's movements are unhurried and assured, illuminated softly by the golden glow of his lantern. In that pool of light, herbs regain their color. The green of leaves, the purple of an echinacea cone flower, the russet of dried marigold heads. It is a scene that feels out of time. It could be the 15th century or many centuries before or after, such is the timelessness of a caretaker among his medicinal plants. We wander on, leaving the physic garden through a side gate that leads, conveniently, into the grounds of a nearby convent or college cloister, a place of quiet devotion that, like the monastery where we began our journey, also keeps a garden for contemplation. The twilight cloister garden that greets us now is bathed in a gentle blue-gray light. The sky above is a deepening cobalt, and the first stars tremble into being. The layout here is a classic cloister square. For quadrants around a central feature, often a well or fountain, and surrounded by covered arcades. A sense of profound peace emanates from the space. The day's last swallows sweep across the open roof, trading places with bats now flitting to and fro in erratic flight. In the grass of the quadrants, fireflies, in places where they exist, are beginning to twinkle, looking like fallen stars awakened among the herbs. We sit on the edge of the stone fountain at the cloister's heart, listening to the water's soft murmur mixing with the rustle of a light breeze through the trees. Yes, there are a few trees planted in the cloister garth, one in each quadrant perhaps, symmetry maintained. They might be fruit trees, like quince or apple, traditionally seen in monastery gardens, representing the tree of knowledge or life. In the gathering dusk, their forms are dark and sheltering. The quince tree in particular was a favorite in medieval cloisters. Its pale blossoms in spring and golden aromatic fruits in fall symbolized love and prosperity. The Heron's Garden account spoke of aged quinces in a cloister herb garden, underplanted with herbs. Perhaps this cloister, too, has old quince trees, now quietly shading the herbs beneath. One can just catch the sweet, fruity scent of ripening quinces in the cool air, blending with the fragrance of nearby night-scented stocks and nicotiana flowers that only now release their perfume. The sisters or scholars who reside here are likely at their evening prayers. Through one of the open windows that line the cloister walkway, a warm light spills and we can hear faint voices in chant. It is Compline, the final prayer of the day, floating like a lullaby through the dusky garden. We remain still, our head bowed slightly, not from obligation but from the natural reverence such an atmosphere instills. The chanting voices, mostly women's voices in this case, rise and fall gently, the Latin words indistinct but comforting. As they sing, one might imagine that the plants themselves are listening. After all, these herbs have long been part of the spiritual life, used to make incense for the chapel. Frankincense and myrrh are exotic, but local angelica and bay or rosemary might be burned for their purifying smoke. Or strewn as strewing herbs on the chapel floor so that every footstep releases fragrance. Common in churches was the scattering of rushes and herbs like meadowsweet and lavender. Indeed, in this cloister garden, along the paths, we see sprigs of lavender and hyssop that have been tucked into crevices, perhaps gathered earlier to freshen the halls, or simply grown here as symbols of purity and devotion, hyssop being a biblical herb of cleansing. As Compline ends, a great hush falls. One by one, lights in the windows are dimmed or shuttered. A single lamp remains by the doorway, likely for any late wanderer. And now, Crickets and frogs take up their gentle chorus in the silence. We take a deep breath and find that the night is rich with smells that were hidden in day. Night-blooming jasmine, if it is cultivated here, would now be at its peak of sweetness. A perfume so potent it seems to silver the air. If not jasmine, then perhaps mock orange or matthiola, evening stock. Planted near the cloister walls, exuding a spicy sweet fragrance that calms and beguiles. Rosemary, interestingly, also has a tradition of helping with sleep and dreams. Some people place a sprig under their pillow for pleasant dreams, despite its invigorating effect by day. In this restful environment, we feel the truth of it. Even rosemary's strong camphorwood aroma has mellowed in the cool night, blending with the damp earthiness of the lawn and the cooling stone. It creates an atmosphere where one could easily drift into slumber with thoughts of benevolent gardens. We lie back on the grass for a moment. It is soft and springy, possibly a fine turf intermingled with low thyme in places, a true sward of paradise. Above, the sky is now spangled with stars. The Milky Way arches overhead like a pale pathway of light. How many Renaissance thinkers looked at those same stars and began to question and wonder anew about the cosmos, even as they still held on to old beliefs. In such a garden, one can feel both the closeness of heaven and the grounding of earth. It is said that in a monastery of old, the garden was a reflection of heaven, a place to contemplate perfection and the divine order. Gazing at the stars framed by the dark silhouettes of cypress trees planted often in sacred precincts for their pointing shape toward the sky, one might feel that connection profoundly. The herbs at our side, perhaps a clump of costmary or a tussock of wild thyme, release their scent as we shift, reminding us of the tangible, the mortal, even as our eyes dwell on the immortal stars. This blend of earthly scent and celestial view epitomizes the Renaissance garden at night. It is where earth and heaven gently meet, and the soul, in a state of calm, can wander freely between them. Somewhere in the distance, from the village or the manor, a night watchman's bell sounds the hour. It is not loud, just a soft toll, likely marking 9 or 10 o'clock. The sound echoes briefly across the courtyard and fades. And now, let us quietly rise and take a last walk through the cloister garth, to imprint every sensation in our memory. We pass by the fountain again. Its water has taken on the dark hue of the sky, a mirror to the night, with only the starlight and a sliver of the waning moon to glint on its moving surface. A single white water lily remains open in the fountain basin. Some varieties bloom at night, like a pale lantern itself. We gently touch its petal, cool, silky, and feel a kinship with that solitary bloom in the quiet dark. Around the edges of the quadrants, medicinal herbs stand in sleep. The chamomile's flowers have folded up as if drowsy, the marigolds closed until morning. Yet the evening primroses shine and the 4 o'clocks, mirabilis, show their magenta faces, having opened in late afternoon and still greeting the night. This interplay of diurnal and nocturnal rhythm among the plants is a subtle reminder of the cyclic nature of life. There's a time to bloom and a time to rest. A time to be active and a time to reflect. Reflection is exactly what the garden encourages now. In this contemplative moment, one might recall the journey of the day, from dawn to dusk, and see a parallel with the journey of life or the journey of history. Gardening in the Renaissance has shown us the continuum from the medieval understanding of herbs to the burgeoning modern science, all without losing the poetic connection between human beings and the natural world. We have seen how a monk's dawn labor among the herbs fed both body and soul, how a housewife's midday garden sustained her family and traditions, how an aristocrat's afternoon stroll through artfully crafted gardens elevated the spirit and demonstrated culture, and now how the scholar's twilight garden merges knowledge with reverence. In each scenario, the garden served as a place of reflection, medicine, and peace. Whether that medicine was literal, healing ailments, or metaphorical, healing the soul with beauty and calm, the herbs rosemary, lavender, sage, thyme, and all their companions have been our guides and our constant friends through these scenes, each contributing their unique scent, flavor, and meaning. Rosemary for remembrance. We indeed remember the moments and feelings each scene gave us. Lavender for calm. Our heart rate has slowed, our mind is soothed by its gentle presence. Sage for wisdom. Perhaps we have gleaned some old new insight by walking these historical paths. Time for courage. Courage to face the darkness of night or the unknown future, knowing that the cycle of day and growth will continue. And many more, each herb a teacher and a comfort. Our journey is nearly at its end. As we step out of the cloister back into the world, we carry with us the quietude of this night garden. The path ahead is lit dimly by the moon, and fields of sleeping wildflowers stretch out beyond. We take one last deep breath of the night air. It is fresh, tinged with a cool humidity that will become dawn's dew. There is a faint perfume of wild honeysuckle from the hedgerows and maybe a bit of crushed grass under our shoes. An owl hoots softly from an old oak tree, standing as a silent guardian of the countryside. In the far distance, beyond our sight but not beyond imagination, lies the sea where herbal breezes carry the scent of land outward and the promise of new plants inward on ships. Elsewhere, mountain gardens, desert gardens, all sleeping under the same stars, each with their own herbs and calm. In the Renaissance, gardens were sometimes compared to a microcosm of the world, an ordered slice of the universe that reflects the whole. Tonight it feels true. In the stillness, one can sense how each tended garden, each patch of herbs and flowers carefully nurtured by loving hands, is a mirror of the greater creation. And as our eyes drift from the outline of a fragrant herb nearby up to the constellations above, we feel that perhaps the gardener of the cosmos tends to us all in similar fashion, watering, pruning, and watching with patience as we grow, bloom, and rest. Finally, as our eyelids grow heavy with the approach of true night, we find a comfortable memory to rest upon. Perhaps it is the image of the monk in the morning sun, clipping his rosemary with gentle focus, or the cottage mother laughing as her child waves a mint sprig under her nose, or the lord and lady pausing by the lavender knot garden, hand in hand, breathing in the dusk, or the old apothecary stirring a potion by lamplight while night flowers scent his study. Any of these vignettes can serve as a soothing lullaby for the mind. We choose one, say, the bees on the lavender on a warm afternoon, and let its hum be the sound that carries us into sleep. The Renaissance garden slowly fades from view as our consciousness drifts, but its essence remains. The herbs and calm we found there are now within us, a gentle balm on the spirit. In our imagination, a soft voice, perhaps the sleepless historian narrator we envisioned, whispers a final good night. May the rosemary remind you of sweet times, the lavender lull you into serene slumber, the sage impart quiet wisdom in your dreams, and the thyme give you the courage to welcome the morning when you awake. Rest now, in the garden of history and night, where all is tranquil and time is in bloom. Sleep falls as softly as petals on grass. The story of gardening in the Renaissance. Herbs and calm has woven its spell, and we, like a garden at eventide, let go of the day and surrender to the peace of the dark. Our minds gently guided to rest by the fragrance of old gardens and the promise of a new dawn to come.